2020, even though COVID has been a bit problematic, we've decided to have this What a Food Day dialogue virtually. And I really appreciate your availability. We really appreciate your support as Water Research Commission. We do believe that, through partnership and collaboration, we can be able to address some of the key challenges that we are facing across the water and agriculture sectors. I'm happy that we are not doing this alone. We have got our key strategic partners, which is the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, Agriculture Research Council, University of KwaZulu-Natal, and the CTAFs, and also University of Venda. So, colleagues, this is where we are. And if you look at the background information, I'm not going to go into details. You can read it at your own time. I would like to welcome our speakers. This is a really good opportunity for us to showcase the knowledge that we have generated so far. You could see, as part of the background information, WRC has been driving research and development and innovation activities for the past 49 years. And next year, we're going to celebrate our 50-year anniversary. Without wasting much time, I'm going to ask our CEO, Mr. Desge Naidu, to share with us, his thoughts or his presentation about post-COVID-19, a water, energy, food nexus perspective for South Africa. And for some of you who are involved in or managing WRC project, we are really pushing very hard, especially with issues related to water, energy, food nexus. This lighthouse is really making impact not only in South Africa or in the region or on the continent, but across the globe. And this is possible due to the collaboration that we have with the various key strategic partners. Without wasting much time, let me ask Desigen to take the floor. Desigen, over to you.
Listen, thank you very much indeed, and good morning, colleagues. It's wonderful to see all of you here. And also greetings to the people who are following us on YouTube. So look, at the outset, we have to say that we have to acknowledge our partners, and Sylvester pointed them out. We are doing this in partnership with the Department of Agriculture, the ARC, CTAFs, also UKZN and University of Venda, but there are many other partners that we'd like to acknowledge that are part of our ability to do what we're able to do in this domain. And we are, as a small little community of practice here in the South, doing this today on World Food Day, together with hundreds of events all over the world, perhaps even thousands. And we are joining the lead event that's going to happen in Rome this afternoon, and that will feature Pope Francis, the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, and of course, the DG of the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, and that's Chu Dongyu. We hold hands with many millions of counterparts across the continent and around the world, commemorating this very crucial day under the theme of grow, nourish, sustain together. Our actions are our future. It is a wonderful theme this year. It is explicit. It organizes for us to emphasize the role of partnership. And it is very clear that what we are going to be able to do now, immediately, and for the next few years, is in fact going to determine what happens with global food security and local food security, perhaps for the rest of the century. We also offer our sincere appreciation for the 75 years of incredible work of the FAO and its partners all over the world. This is a wonderful anniversary, and that too is going to be celebrated today, and we want to add our voice to that celebration. The FAO has consolidated, synergized, and stimulated the golden effort in the uphill battle to develop agriculture and the nourishment ecosystem in our collective quest to end hunger in South Africa, in the developing world, and indeed the globe as a whole, and laid the platform for lasting food security. We also take the opportunity to acknowledge another incredible achievement of a banner organization in this domain. In May 2018, the UN Security Council passed Resolution UN SCR 2417, acknowledging publicly and multilaterally for the first time the link between conflict and hunger. The reality is that the pre-COVID data indicates that 80% of the chronically undernourished children living in the world live in the conflict zones of that world. We are also clear that the lack of food security has been a primary driver of conflict and war since the very beginnings of human life on Earth. It is therefore in a very tense atmosphere that the Nobel Committee awarded the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize to the World Food Programme. Our congratulations to Executive Director David Beasley and the WFD Executive Board and its many partners on this incredible achievement. But 2020 is the year of COVID-19. Years from now, modern history may well be divided into two phases: life before SARS-CoV-2 and life after. And the latter's key characteristics depend almost solely on the actions that you and I and our organizations and our partners and the communities that we serve take now. These actions locally and globally during this crisis is going to determine the story that we're able to tell about what happens after this crisis. It is a pandemic that might be remembered as the most impactful event since the World Wars. A combination of the health challenge is compounded by the lockdown-induced severe economic challenges everywhere in the world. The IMF chief economist, Geeta Gopinath, has been explicit about global projections with precious few countries that will have positive growth in 2020 and even 2021. In fact, most countries, including South Africa, and most of its major partners, will experience negative growth in this period of time, and we've already seen those statistics coming through. All countries, even those with the positive growth, will be a much lower positive growth and therefore in contraction. This has incredibly important implications for people's survival, so much so that this has become the core component of the South African government's recovery strategy, as it was presented just yesterday by President Ramaphosa to a joint sitting of our two houses, of the legislature and the National Council on Provinces. In fact, one of the central features that has been announced is that the COVID-19 grant has been extended for a further 3 months to shield the most vulnerable in the South African scenario around impending poverty and potential loss of food security. The FAO, which already declares that there are 135 million people in 55 countries that in the pre-COVID phase were in acute hunger on the back of conflict, a worsening climate crisis, and a declining economy, has now updated that forecast. And the current forecast is that this COVID-19 pandemic will further add another 130 million people into that category, giving us an unbelievable total, possibly by the end of this year already, if not then in the next 6 months, an unbelievable total of 265 million people that will be in acute hunger all over the world. The COVID-induced food insecurity is potentially devastating. So colleagues, where does that leave us? The first thing to say around this is that science, technology, and innovation has to play a much bigger role than it has ever done before. That this reliance going into the future is going to be absolute. We have to be innovative both on the way we generate the information, on the toolboxes that we create around organizing for us to be in a much better space, and emphasizing this issue around synergy, cooperation, and connectivity. And the idea of the nexus is absolutely central to this task. You know, in the middle of this thing, the UN Secretary General, together with UN Water a couple of weeks ago, on the back of the very low numbers that we are seeing as far as progress is concerned with SDG 6 and all the other SDGs, frankly, announced the Decade of Action 2020 to 2030, and the Global Acceleration Framework. And core to that acceleration framework were the usual suspects, but with the addition of data and information and innovation. But SDG 6 works in absolute concert with SDG 2, the quest for zero hunger, and SDG 7, that seeks to have affordable and clean energy available to everybody in the world. And this nexus, the nexus that we have been working on as a community of practice for these last couple of years, and I must congratulate you, because on the back of the work that you have done, SADC has become, in fact, a global hotspot, maybe even the biggest hotspot currently around the production of new knowledge in the water, energy, food domain. This is a tremendous accolade. But we must recognize that this nexus operates beyond, and in fact, into the entire suite of the 17 goals associated with the Sustainable Development Program. Because this nexus enables and is enabled by, one, SDG 1, an end to poverty, which is the ultimate goal that we're looking for. It blends itself in the way that we organize these strategies, and we've been starting to get quite explicit around how the operationalization can happen, into SDG 8 around decent work and economic growth. We are talking about organizing for this nexus to become a central pillar in the planning of our cities and towns, contributing to SDG 11 around sustainable cities and communities. All through this, we are looking for the possibility of new value chains coming out of a smarter way in which we are, in a resource efficient manner, organizing our new agricultural paradigm with benefits to places like energy. And that in turn talks to a contribution to industry and innovation and infrastructure that is called forward SDG 9. And throughout all of this, we are interweaving SDG 17 with the notion of partnerships. And we are looking for this to result in those immediate and very important outcomes, but over and above that, the influence on things like SDG 5 on gender equality, on SDG 10 around inequality as a whole around the world, because as Antonio Guterres has pointed out very, very explicitly, that this is the bigger pandemic that we have to deal with, the pandemic of inequality. And he expressed this in the Mandela lecture that he delivered this year on the 18th of July, but he has repeated this message elsewhere in the world. In fact, I feel fairly confident that some of this is going to come up in the Rome event. If not from him, then almost certainly from Pope Francis. We are also looking that this must result in SDG 12's quest for much more responsible production and consumption. This is absolutely key. We have heralded the end of monoculture, but the manner in which we engage that needs to have a far-reaching effect inside the system. And our efforts should contribute to climate action, organize for life below the water to be in a much better space, and life on land to be in a much more comfortable domain. So what I'm saying is that this nexus approach that we're adopting around organizing for ourselves to, in future years, celebrate this World Food Day, because we have actually overcome the acute hunger problem, that we are overcoming the issues of malnourishment in the world, and we are celebrating the possibility of a global, very active, very participative partnership around the way we organize agriculture into the future. And then the last point that I want to put into this discussion is the issue of indigenous foods and indigenous peoples. Now, I know that there are fantastic experts on this panel that are going to be talking about this in explicit detail, but I just want to dwell on this a little bit. That, the work we've done in the WRC, the work that our partners have done, many of you have done, either on WRC projects or elsewhere, I've noted two very important facts repeatedly with every one of those case studies. The first is that indigenous foods in general are very highly nutritious. Not only in each of those crop types, but also around the way it promotes a diversity of staples inside the system, which leads to better agriculture, more sustainable agriculture, and healthier people. The second is the water efficiency and other resource efficiencies associated with non-exotic crops. And this has been proven over and over again. The challenge is around the scale up. And the thing that we're borrowing from the indigenous people and indigenous knowledge systems is that the one part of that triangle is the possibility of new sources of food at scale. The second, though, is the issue associated with the traditions of how you grow, the traditions of how you consume, the traditions of how you store, and its invaluable contribution to higher levels of food security around the world. And then there's the issue of practices, and the practices primarily around how you grow these crops, what kind of systems you use, what kind of seasonal planning you use, how you bring different players into that system. So this triangle around both indigenous people and indigenous knowledge systems on the one hand, and indigenous crops and foods on the other, work in a wonderful concert. And this is something I think we really should be celebrating. So colleagues, I should conclude now. And maybe the messages that I want to pass on as I conclude is the following. One, as we sit in this pandemic, the necessity for action has never been higher in modern history. The world is in a desperate place. The traditional divides between the developed countries and the developing countries are disappearing on the back of this. The things that we held together as absolutes, as sacred cows, have disappeared too. If you look at the map of the world and you map it according to the epidemiology, the epidemic preparedness index, for example, and overlay the cases and the case flows across the world, the correlation is devastating. Some of the best prepared places in the world are some of the most affected places in the world. So it's not just a South problem anymore. It is a South and North problem. But we all know that the South tends to suffer much, much longer after the pandemic has been dealt with. So if we have this huge level of necessity, and we know that necessity is the mother of invention, then research and information and innovation has to come to the fore and take the lead around organizing for much better ways to do things and scaling up the knowledge that we already have. This is absolute. Because we are looking towards a future that is not only food secure, that is not only water secure, that is not only energy secure, but done in a way that we certainly build back better, but also build back greener. So colleagues, my last word is that firstly, on this World Food Day, congratulations and gratitude to all of you for the immense contributions you have already made around organizing for us to be in a better place. And the reward for such good work is that we have an even bigger agenda that we have to tackle going forward. You have to work even harder, even smarter. And together, we certainly are going to be able to be in a better future for ourselves, for the people that come after us. Thank you very much indeed, and welcome to all of you. Sylvester, back to you.
Thanks, Des. Again, we really appreciate, your thought, and you're absolutely correct. WRC has decided to add the new focus area that's going to deal with indigenous or underutilized crops, and you will hear more. I'm happy that Professor Modi is also going to share his presentation with us, and we are going to push very hard. As you have indicated, we've already invested a lot of resources in this focus area, and we do believe that our strategic partners will keep on supporting us. Yes, of course, we are aligning our activities not only with the Sustainable Development Goals, but also aligning it with our national programs, including the National Development Plans. So yeah, colleagues, this is where we are, and I'm happy that there are a lot of participants sending their comments through the chat box. Without wasting much time, let me ask Professor Albert Modi from University of KwaZulu-Natal to share his presentation on the indigenous crops as part of the transformative agenda, a focus on strengthening local food system. Just for your information, Prof. Modi has done a lot of work with the WRC, and his achievements are well documented. He has produced a number of postgraduate students. When it comes to human capital development, he's one of the guys who's at the forefront. And we really appreciate his availability. I know he's a very busy man, but Prof, thanks for joining us. Over to you. Prof. Modi, are you there?
Thank you very much, Sylvester. I'm here. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate the opening remarks from Mr. Naidu because he touched on some of the things that I would like to share. But I would like to thank him as the leader of the Water Research Commission of South Africa for allowing the University of KwaZulu-Natal to raise the flag of South Africa on this very important day. That's why I'm wearing this. It's deliberate. I'm representing South Africa. And with your permission, I'd like to share my presentation as I highlight the points that I'm making, even though I'll be going through it quite fast. Let me try to do that. I know Tafadzwa is there. If I get stuck, it's just going to take over. Am I sharing my screen?
Yes,
yes, Prof. Your presentation is on the screen now.
Okay, let me just make it to show PowerPoint. Yes, my focus is going to be on the indigenous crops and what we believe as a result of many years of research is an opportunity for them to contribute to the food system, which we believe is actually not very well designed. I'm afraid I don't mean to start on a negative point, but the food system of the world feeds us. In the middle class, we spend about 33% of our incomes on food in different ways. And those who are poor spend a minimum of 50% of their incomes. And many of them have got to travel long distances to what they believe is the place where you can get better food. They've got food next to them, and science has not taken enough time to look into this food as it has been happening for thousands of years now, where we identified some crops. We used plant breeding, genetic engineering, and other methods of science to cluster them into species that can be utilized to feed the human species. As a consequence of that, we ended up with a domination by a handful of species which do a very good job. Wheat, rice, maize are in the top of this list, where we all derive our food as the majority of people. But there are other elements or aspects of our food system that require high levels of certain kinds of nutrients. And they can contribute not only to the food system, but also to the economy of South Africa. So what I want to share with you as a starting point is that the suggestion that if we look at a well-designed food system, we can find a space for indigenous crops. But what we need to do is to create a space in our education and research system where Indigenous finds not necessarily equal space, but a space together with science. If we do that, we will start off by identifying some key livelihood assets. If you look at the livelihood assets and you identify them as the human assets, let me show us a pointer here so that you know what I'm talking about. I apologize. I should have thought about this earlier. If you identify them as these assets, the human capital, the social capital, the natural capital, the physical capital, and the financial capital, you will have a well-designed food system that does not only look at how much do I eat as a human being, but also how do I survive? But in order for you to do this, you must understand, of course, that there are going to be vulnerabilities. I believe, even when I teach my students, that without a government, it doesn't matter where you go, it doesn't matter how far back you go, it doesn't matter how far into the future you go, there will be no policies and institutions that allow us to succeed. So I'm hoping that over time, as we continue to work with government, we are actually going to find livelihood outcomes that create a space for science and indigenous so that we can solve the problems of Africa, in particular, using the indigenous knowledge that is there. So let me then go back to my presentation that argues that whatever is claimed by the world in terms of how poor people are affected by poverty and hunger happens in South Africa, and many of us don't see it. We don't want to acknowledge that in South Africa, we have examples of the poorest places in the developing world or underdeveloped world, and those places that are affected by something that is beyond the pandemic of COVID-19. I'm not underplaying COVID-19, but there are people who suffer every day, and COVID-19 has worsened their lives. So we need to understand this. And we also need to accept that the solution sits in agriculture. Agriculture is looked down upon by young people and many people who think that life is somewhere else in other careers or other livelihood systems. But the one thing that people forget is that agriculture has got backward and forward linkages with industry and service in terms of its contribution to the GDP of any country. If you define any one of these three pillars of GDP, where agriculture, industry, and service are the major pillars, and you define each one of them, you will find a room for agriculture in each one of those definitions. So when you look at the world economy, you can then identify USA and China, which are fighting to be the leaders of this world, being the leaders. Then you ask yourself, where does their GDP contribution come from? It comes from agriculture, industry, and service. And you try to find South Africa, you realize that South Africa also has a GDP that is derived from agriculture, industry, and service. But the contribution of agriculture in South Africa seems to be very small compared to the contribution of agriculture to the GDP in India and even Nigeria. And the question is, can you explain the reason for this? Could it be linked to some disadvantages? And you start shifting and looking at the other parts of the world. If I were to randomly select developing countries, you can see how agriculture begins to grow in its contribution to the GDP. And if you look at these countries, Tanzania, Ghana, and Mozambique, you can see how agriculture actually overtakes industry. Is it possible that in South Africa, in some deep rural areas of South Africa, we can redefine the meaning of GDP so that it is not defined in a monolithic way that generally defines the GDP of South Africa? And my view is that, yes, we can do that. And we can do that without losing the importance of other sectors of the GDP. But we can do that by identifying already existing opportunities that are created through agriculture in terms of employment, and focusing mainly on that backward and forward linkage that agriculture has. The challenge that we have is that people are moving away from the rural areas to the urban areas, and the population is decreasing from the rural areas. You come to South Africa and you ask yourself, which provinces of South Africa are actually leaking, and which provinces of South Africa are gaining people who are coming from the rural areas, and which rural areas? Gauteng is absorbing a lot of people who are coming from the rural areas because there is no agriculture there, because there is no knowledge about agriculture, which is not true. The Western Cape, the same thing. The people of the Cape, Eastern Cape, one of the poorest provinces in this country, is having people who are moving from the rural areas to this kind of system. And yet, in the rural areas, there are opportunities to grow indigenous crops in this kind of system. And if you were to ask me, where do I want to be? Is it here or here? The answer is going to be here, but then the question is going to be, what can I do when I am in those rural areas? Well, I'm going to say to you, you've got land that is enough for you to begin to show your face. And the South African government supports people who get themselves together, organize themselves together, get certified in order for them to go forward. So this is a picture that I took when I was doing the research of the Water Research Commission at Umbumbulu in KwaZulu-Natal. And I'm going to share with you a story of how these people can change their lives, but they have not gotten there yet through utilization of indigenous knowledge. And this cycle of the movement of people from the urban areas to the rural areas can actually be minimized. So I'm going to be going fast, as I said. I don't have a lot of time. If you look at the availability of land in South Africa where food is produced, it's not enough, you can say, from one perspective, but it is enough from another perspective if you've got a well-designed food system. And that well-designed food system, if it is supported by research and education, it will identify a role for indigenous and traditional knowledge and clearly state that indigenous knowledge is a science for innovation. It is science for agribusiness. It is science for the poor rural farmer and the rural economic development in those areas. Now, when you make people believe that agriculture can contribute to the rural economic development, the first thing they say is that government must make me jump from this level to this level. I believe that government can support people to grow and reach this level in their own way. But the first thing that we must do is to identify and agree that in order for you to do that, you must find a space in the value chain and find a niche for the poor farmer And I challenge both government and education institutions to attract young people to agriculture so that they can support their mothers and fathers, focusing on the opportunities that exist in the rural areas. And if you do that, you will then be in a position to identify all those challenges and interventions. The major challenge that we have is the poor yields. But it is mainly because of the way we define these yields that makes it difficult for us to understand that we've got adequate yields if we utilize the resources such as water appropriately. We utilize the environmental resources appropriately and harvest something that is going to create opportunities where the environment, the organization of the people and the planning, as well as the insights are going to combine to create a space in that value chain. If you do that, you can address the abject poverty that is found in the rural areas and diminish the health and poor productivity that is the plight of the rural people, primarily the rural woman, who has low income and believes that having money that is coming directly from government is going to be my solution. You do that by making them believe in the indigenous and traditional crops. You do that by making them believe that these crops have got value, they've got reputation, they've got versatility. They can occupy a niche in the system. And if you do that, then you can create a specialized market. And that specialized market is going to be for a specialized kind of product and a special service that is contributed by the indigenous crops and traditional crops. So the research that we did as a result of an opportunity given to us by the Water Research Commission to go to the rural areas allowed us to ask the people in the rural areas whether or not an indigenous crop is a necessary evil. Is it something that you can tell me what it means to you? And this illustration shows that in KwaZulu-Natal, people look at them as wild plants, the plants of the ancestors, the plants for the Zulus, the plants for Black people. But the worrying thing is here where they say that they are associated with poverty. Then when we say to them, tell us, what do you mean? Which ones are they? And the list that you see here basically indicates to you what we could identify as scientists to be traditional crops. But they are indigenous in the sense that they are part of the culture of the people who use them. And if you delve deep into these to try and identify opportunities, you start identifying wild plants, many of them indigenous in this part of the world and in Africa that people say they can use. And as a consequence of this, we then took advantage of working with these people, identify some of these wild plants that have got opportunities, and use the Water Research Commission work to do some trials, participatory trials that allow us to work with young people in the rural areas, attracting them to a system of agriculture that is designed to mix an indigenous crop with a conventional crop, so that in a combination of a harvested material, you can produce a crop that is defined mainly on the basis of its nutritional value. We did this under controlled environment conditions as well, and created opportunities for people to participate in agriculture and bringing on board indigenous crops. So already the Water Research Commission has extended its support for people, and particularly the Agricultural Research Commission has come up with a lot of knowledge about indigenous crops, identifying these together with us. These are some of the examples of the known indigenous crops. These are the crops that people are ashamed of, and we have a responsibility as scientists to say there's nothing to be ashamed of, because these crops can be eaten raw, and when you eat them raw, they are very healthy. They can also be used in the pharmaceutical world to produce medicine. Shepherd's pest, which is one of the weeds that I showed you in my previous slide, has been shown to be useful for heart and circulatory problems that the problems of human beings. One of the reasons why many people succumb to COVID-19 coronavirus is because of their poor health status. People say that they've got comorbidities, and some of them are related to poor nutrition that has led to some diseases and ailments that become permanent. We can find a solution. Research elsewhere in the world has indicated that some of these plants, which are just used as edible crops in South Africa or Southern Africa, can be taken through laboratory studies and analyses to produce treatments for specific diseases of the world. Now, can you see, if I've got 0.1 of a hectare of land, I can produce enough material to extract enough material to make medicine. So it's not just for food, it's also for health. So one of the things that you need to do if you're going to attract young people to agriculture is to show them the diversity of agriculture and its connectedness to the other aspects of the industry. In 2012, a study that was published in the British Medical Journal of 2012 indicated that age-related cognitive decline can be treated using African traditional food plants. Well, what is it that they have? They are nutritious, they are safe foods, they are inexpensive, they are associated with less diseases. If you compare their nutritional value to some of the very popular vegetables, and I'm showing here one that has been known and made to be very popular in the rural areas, that is cabbage. You compare it with some of the traditional crops, and I'm using Zulu names here, referring to some of the plants that you know, and indicating some illustrations or pictures of these plants. These are weeds in the traditional agriculture system. But if we design our system, we can have crops that can give us significant amounts of nutrients that have medicinal properties. Iron and zinc are very important for our livelihoods, but particularly for women and the aged. Compare cabbage with Amaranthus with respect to the amount of iron and zinc that is going to be found in the food that is derived from that kind of plant. And it's chalk and cheese. The comparison is chalk and cheese. But cabbage is not useless. If you look at the vitamin C content of iron compared to other nutritional aspects of the crop itself, vitamin A, carotenoids, and vitamin D, cabbage does very well when it comes to vitamin C, but it's not necessarily the best. There are other indigenous crops that are thrown away by people, and they are very useful. They've got high levels of vitamin C, vitamin A, carotenoids, and vitamin E. Now, people buy tablets to get these things, and poor people don't have medical aid to buy these things. Why don't you make them produce them so that they can eat them, but sell them to the industry that is designed by a government that targets these poor rural people to access some of these materials in order to contribute to the industry part of the GDP. Remember, GDP is something that has got three pillars. It has got agriculture, industry, and services. You can target 1 million people in South Africa and say to them, produce some of the crops that are going to be directly taken to the pharmaceutical world so that we can extract carotenoids so that we can support ailments that affect the majority of people who do not have diseases and make these available in public hospitals. Just quickly now, as I conclude, I want to run through some of these just in case some of the people who are watching this presentation or listening to me don't know them. And unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time to tell you a lot of details about them. Amaranthus, it's part of the culture, as Mr. Naidu said, part of the culture, gluten-free, palatable, easy to cook, protein that is well suited for human nutritional needs. Okay, sorghum is a cereal that is African, indigenous cereal crop, okay? It is drought tolerant. You've got Bambara Groundnut. It is indigenous to this part of the world. It is drought tolerant. It suits a system of intercropping and organic farming. Wild mustard. We are now busy with some of my students trying to identify the reasons why this association of the roots of fungi, wild mustard with some fungus can actually increase the phosphorus content of the soil. But it is very high in vitamins. So research that has been done and published by a lot of people, including the ARC, show that these wild vegetables in combination can be used to produce material that is utilized, not being directly medicinal, but being pegged as the kinds of foods that have got a concentration of different kinds of minerals and vitamins. So Moringa, we know, many of us know Moringa. It is a valuable indigenous product, but you can take all sorts of other vegetables that I've shown you that are wild vegetables, combine them, and you can produce something that is equivalent to Moringa. Okay. I indicated already that the agro-processing could be an opportunity for a poor farmer, a poor person of the rural areas to enter into the value chain. All you do, you ask them to produce them under environmental conditions that are not going to abuse water, that are not going to abuse the environmental conditions of soil. And they can be taken to the other parts of the GDP, not only services, but, not only industry, but services. When you go to a restaurant, you're actually in the part of the GDP that is defined as service, the pillar that is service. Iced tea can be derived from these crops. Soups and food that have got ingredients that are rich in minerals and vitamins can be derived from these crops. You can make young people participate in a system that is going to make them start small businesses. And these small businesses specialize in indigenous vegetables that are going to contribute a special kind of tea, a special kind of soup, and a special kind of vitamin. And you sell these not only to South Africans, you can sell them to people overseas. Research elsewhere in the world has shown that if you compare them with other crops, the amount of nutrients can be sometimes more than 50% better than the conventional crops. So I believe that we need a connectedness, a nexus that says connect indigenous knowledge with science, connect conventional farming with subsistence farming, and identify opportunities to improve the health system of South Africa as well as the food system. So I'm going to share with you now, as I close, the plan that we have at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, which we want to sell to the government of South Africa. And we're using information that is derived from the work that we've been doing for the Water Research Commission. We want to establish KwaZulu-Natal small-scale agriculture. We've got all the ingredients, all the information, all the data taken from the publications and the information that we've given to the Water Research Commission. And we can galvanize many, many people of South Africa, and we make them participate in a value chain system that says, I live in a certain part of KwaZulu-Natal, and I am going to be contributing this type of an indigenous crop and this type of a traditional crop. And with the policies of the country and the policies of the institutions, we can create more partnerships in South Africa and elsewhere. And that KwaZulu-Natal small-scale agriculture can then have siblings elsewhere in other provinces. And our dream and aim and vision that is going to be realized, as long as there is the Water Research Commission, the ARC, and the South African government, is that we're going to have KwaSA, KwaZulu-Natal small-scale agriculture, and we will have EXA, Eastern Cape small-scale agriculture. We will have MPUSA, Mpumalanga small-scale agriculture. We will have Limpopo small-scale agriculture. And the future generations of young people are going to be attracted to agriculture because they can see themselves participating in the GDP of South Africa. Professor Mpandeli, let me stop there. I've taken a lot of your time.
Prof, thank you so much. No, don't worry about the time. We really appreciate your thoughts, even though some of your thoughts are very provocative. Colleagues, I'm tempted to give you maybe 2 minutes to ask questions, and then we'll take the next presentation. Tobile, please assist me on this. Are there any questions or comments that you would like to raise? I know that Desigan has alerted that, you made a very great input. What about the threats of indigenous foods to the established commercial agriculture system? Do you want to react on that, Prof. Modi?
As I indicated, the challenge that we have is the monolithic way of looking at things. You look at conventional agriculture and you separate it from other things. And that is why I'm challenging people to look at it from the perspective of the GDP. There can be no challenge to the commercial agriculture system if we create space where subsistence farming is taking place and it is not contributing to the food system. It is not contributing to the health. It is not contributing to the economy. And we say, while I produce 80 tons per hectare of sugarcane in northern Zululand, you can produce half a ton of Amaranthus in a community of Mgababa on the south coast. And once that has been put together, it can assist you 400 people who put that half a ton to gain some income. But it will assist thousands of people who are going to get pharmaceutical value from that income. So there is no threat. We just need all the industry people to get together, those who see any relevance in deriving value from indigenous crops, looking at them not only as foods, but also as material that can be processed for other values.
Okay, thanks for that. It's very interesting. I will continue to have this engagement or discussion outside this event. Colleagues, any further questions or comments or clarity, or even criticism? You are welcome to criticize us. We don't have problem with that. Tobile, are there any maybe questions from the chat box?
Hi, Prof. We do have one hand from Matlo.
Okay, Macro, go ahead.
Matlo.
Oh, Matlo, oh, sorry.
Yes. Matlo, you're unmuted.
Hello. Good
Yes,
morning.
Yes,
we can
Mahabu,
hear
yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Prof. Modi, thank you for a great presentation. I just wanted to know whether the presentations will be emailed to us.
Maybe let me respond that we'll make arrangement with all the speakers, and then I do believe that we'll share those presentations with you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Oh, okay. Any further questions or comment, colleagues?
nothing
If
from my
nothing,
side,
thank you
Prof.
so much. If nothing, thank you so much, Prof. Modi. I know that you are a busy man. Would appreciate if maybe you can be with us until the end of this session, but if not, then that's okay. I propose that, we take the next presentation. It's going to be done by Dr. Insare from the Agriculture Research Council. His presentation is about building food and nutrition security at all levels, a case study of a school garden project in Gauteng province. This is also one of the projects funded by the Water Research Commission. Dr. Array, without wasting much time, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Is my presentation visible to everybody?
Yes, it is, Prof.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, that my name is Sinta Araya from the Agricultural Research Council. So this morning, I'm going to share with you that the project, which was funded by WRC, mainly focusing on establishing school gardens in Gauteng province, in the municipality of Mamelodi, in 2 primary schools. So the project, maybe just to give you a bit of background, this was the reference group, which was assisting us in all guiding us with the achievement of the project, just mainly to introduce the team. Also, this was a team which was involved in the project. Now, the project started by identifying or trying to gain more experience what other countries or other stakeholders have been experiencing in establishing a school garden. So we started with identifying or gathering literature reviews to see that what is the available information when it comes to school garden. So most of the information we found was that school garden are regarded as a vehicle of knowledge, and of course also transferring skill to the young generation, like what Prof. Modi was saying, which can be a good opportunity for us to teach our youngsters or our children that agriculture is not only a dirty work. Agriculture is something very interesting, which can be able any household or any individual or any human being that to be more self-sustainable. So we start gathering this information, and then look also that in addition to that, the impact which they can also make towards the health aspect, because this is the best way of introducing more nutritious vegetables or more nutritious crops, like Prof. Modi mentioned that, like our indigenous crops, which are highly nutritious, is the best way of introducing them or teaching the youngsters to say that these are not eating amaranth doesn't mean like what Prof has already mentioned, that doesn't mean that somebody is poor, but it's more of actually has got more medicinal value, more nutritional value as well. And then of course also to make more impact when it comes to our young children. Not many of them like eating food with good or beautiful green color. So it could be a bit a best way of changing the dietary habit of our young children. So then of course also these school gardens, they are not only a short term, they are a long term. They can play a great role towards combating food and nutrition insecurity in communities, and of course also within our the learners as well. To give you an example, during the lockdown, when the schools were closed, we had all the produce were there, and the community were able to harvest and then distribute or share their produce with the people who were around the school gardens, or even the teachers. So it is a long-term, it can create a long-term impact when it comes to food and nutrition and security. And of course also the impact they can create towards teaching our youngsters, taking care of their environment, making them to be more interacting with or making them more also interested in agriculture. And like what I was mentioning also, or Prof mentioned also, Prof Modi mentioned also, is that making them more familiar with our indigenous crops, which when we produce these indigenous crops in the garden, then they can be harvested and then they can be utilized in the school feeding program, which is the kitchen. Now, we try also to identify that what is the existing food environment, what that literature say, or what is the available information. Yes, Prof?
Sorry, Doctor. We're still on slide number 1. Can you move your presentation?
Okay. Sorry about that. Is it moving now, Prof?
I mean, it's still slide number 1. Tobile, can you assist him?
Okay. Because from my side, it's on slide number 5.
Slide number 5. Maybe you just need to maximize your slide. It will move on the screen.
Okay.
Presentation mode.
Sorry, Sylvester. One of the tricks that works is if Hinsa can stop sharing and start sharing again. That's worked for me before.
Okay. Thanks.
That's
It's fine now?
Now you need to go to presentation so that it's showing the slides.
Because here I'm getting that it's sharing. I don't know, maybe it's the okay.
Tobile, do you have the arrays presentation?
yes, I do have it. Let me share it.
Yeah,
Okay,
maybe
thank
let's. Then Array will guide Tobile if he needs to go to the next slide.
Okay.
Is this the correct one?
Yes. Thank you, Tobin. All right. Maybe if you could go back to slide number. Yes, that's fine. Yeah. Thank you. So we also try to look at the South African condition, especially when it comes to the food environment in the school feeding program. What are the literature saying about the food environment? Majority of the information we found that malnutrition is a challenge, which can be either over or under nutrition of school children, which is a major problem when it comes to learners and also young women. And then we also found out that when they developed a questionnaire to ask learners about nutrition and healthy food, they had the knowledge. They know which one is nutritious, which one is healthy. But when it comes to practicing or eating the healthy food, you won't find that they choose unhealthy food. So with all this information, we started like developing a strategy. What is the best way of establishing these school gardens so that we create a long-term impact, not a short-term impact? And maybe can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. And then also we look at what is the successful, for instance, a school garden to be successful. Are there any strategies which one follows? And then the majority of them, they indicated that you should start with clear objectives. not to be more realistic, to see that if the objectives we draw in the project are they achievable, and of course also to train either the community or the beneficiaries who are going to be involved, and provide them, or even the teachers or the garden coordinators and so on, and then try to integrate the school garden with the academic activities, for instance, and then the availability of land and water, and then what are the infrastructures required to develop or to establish a school garden, and also what is the support or the technical support which would be required for the schools. So maybe can we go to the next slide, please? All right, thank you. So the objectives of this were the objectives of the project. As I shared with you that the project started in 2 primary schools, Buladhoro and Malasedi Masana in Mamelodi, and then also one of our objectives was to establish or to develop infrastructure of the schools, and focusing mainly on towards the garden, and also human capacity development, which is informal. It could be training of the beneficiaries or the school governing bodies, and formally it could be involving more students which are registered at universities, and so for them to gain more scientific information, so that we support our output. And of course also look at the inputs, like for instance the water, which is more one of the main factors that affect production, and the irrigation systems, and of course also to improve the water use of this crops through or utilize the resources more through introducing techniques like the rainwater harvesting or rooftop rainwater harvesting. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? All right. So we started the project by introducing to the schools and to the stakeholders, so that we mobilize and then make them aware that what the objective of this project is, and then who will be involved, of course, by the help of the school governing body, and then also try to make them understand that their involvement, how is it going to be, how they will benefit, and then try to win their heart, to say that we're not going to pay a salary of those people or the beneficiaries who will be involved in the project, but there should be a way of them getting compensated. Whatever they produce, it might be 50%, it might be 25%, depending on the arrangement with the school, then they can share the produce. So that we had a brief discussion with them, and we came up with certain agreements. Next slide, please. Then the next step was to identify the infrastructure. What is the available infrastructure to establish these school gardens? What is the area available, and the water available, and of course, would there be any irrigation system available? If not, then what can we procure? And for the rainwater harvesting, which is also very critical, instead of the schools utilizing municipality water, and can we introduce rainwater harvesting infrastructure? It could be rooftop rainwater harvesting, or in the field. And then what are the infrastructures required to procure or install gutters, pumps, irrigation pumps, JoJo tanks, and of course also the need. Remember, the main challenge we face in majority of our project is that theft is a major challenge. Do we need to procure fence? What are the security threats, and so on and so on? And then of course the training was also one of the key activities. And then what are the gardening tools they have? Do they have spade, or do they have watering can? And what do we need to procure? Next slide, please. So this slide is to share with you that how was the condition of the project before we start implementing through the support of WRC. Next slide, please. So we started by taking soil sample to see that what is the available nutrient in the soil, so that it will assist us or guide us to apply fertilizer, and of course also to understand the condition of the soil, because sometimes you find that certain area is neglected, maybe building materials which can affect the produce might be thrown there, and so on and so on. So to understand that, we took a soil sample, then we start clearing the area, took a tractor to loosen the soil, because most of majority of the area, or the plots which were available, were allocated for these gardens, hasn't been plowed or used for crop production. So we took a tractor and then loosen the soil and then prepare the area. Next slide, please. One more slide back, please. Yes, thank you. Then remember, CEO mentioned about climate smart agriculture or environmental friendly way of producing crops. So what we did was also that resources are limited in the schools. What are the climate smart technology which we can roll or take out from what we have been conducting research within the organization, of course through the support of our stakeholders like the WRC. And we identified two systems, which is one on the left-hand side, which is the bag system, which one uses a simple a woven bag to produce vegetables. You fill up your bag with is either compost or sawdust, and then you start planting around and on the top, which is we found that can be one of the technologies to roll out into the schools. And on the bottom left, you see that there is a tunnel, which is can also be utilized in the school garden, where one can be able to produce different vegetables in a small area. And of course, also, for instance, if there are any environmental factors, let's say it might be hail or it might be insect, then the shade net or the net can be able to protect the produce within the tunnel. So can we go to the next slide, please? All right. So then it's also good to understand what is required. Like, for instance, like what Prof was saying this morning, that to understand the situation around or the situation around the school children, to see that which crops should we introduce? Is it really going to make a difference when it comes to contributing or combating food insecurity and nutritional insecurity in the school children? So we also look at the feasibility. We've done a feasibility study. So this is the few points which we identified that we find that kids who go to bed hungry, and the same also parents as well, which are mainly young women, and so on, so that we understand that when we establish this project, it is really going to make a difference. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So, as I shared with you earlier, that we look at the tools or the equipment, gardening tools required. This way, a few of the equipments which was supplied to the schools, including which weather station, which was supposed to install before COVID, but COVID hampered our progress. We have already, which we'll install, and the next week, the last input or the last one of the last tools which has to be installed or provided to the schools. But the rest, or we already supplied, they were already, the community or the school gardens are equipped with them. Next slide, please. And of course, if you remember earlier, I mentioned that water is a major challenge. So we try to optimize or maximize our water use or our water conservation practices. So what we did is that we installed this JoJo tank in order to harvest water from the rooftop. I think it maybe we could go to the next slide. Yes, you see that the team is busy here installing gutters, and of course connecting to the JoJo tank, and supplying or providing pumps. And the bottom part, you see that the gardens are established, including the school garden with the bag system, and the open field also with drippers irrigation. Next slide, please. Yes, so this is the one of the climate smart technology we introduced to the schools, producing vegetable on the bag system, which is you utilize a very small area where the bag will sit, and then vertically produce your vegetables, mainly the leafy vegetables, like what Prof was saying. It could be indigenous crops like amaranth and others, but for this one it was switched. When it comes to root crop, because remember, root crops, they require a larger area. One can be able to produce root crops on top of the bags, such as your carrot, beetroot, sweet potato, and so on, while you're producing your leafy vegetables on the side of the bag system. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide is to share with you that when we're busy installing the tunnels and supplying seedlings and other input like fertilizer, which is organic fertilizer, and seedlings, of course, and so on. Thank you. Next one, please. All right, so this way, inside the tunnel, like you can see that we planted different vegetables, switched, to be carrot, green beans, and so on, which can contribute towards the food and nutrition security of the learners. And of course, the weather station, like what I mentioned. Next slide, please. Okay, so this one is to share with you that other techniques, other climate smart techniques that the schools can utilize. What we did is that we tried to integrate the rainwater harvesting, meaning that one can be able to capture the rain next to the plant by creating kind of a pocket next to the ridge where the plants are growing, and which will allow or optimize whatever rainfalls within the pocket wouldn't go through or wouldn't be lost through runoff, and integrate that one with mulching, which can optimize the production of the crops, which in this case was sweet potato, orange flesh sweet potato, which is known with the high content of beta-carotene, which is a precursor of the vitamin A, which we use it mulching and integrate it with rainwater harvesting technique. Next slide, please. Okay, then this is also another technique, because the idea is that to show the learners there are a number of techniques, interesting techniques in agriculture, which one can practice to produce crops. So this one is without the same technique as the previous one, but without mulching, which is the in-situ rainwater harvesting. You can clearly see that here between the rows there are pockets which you got the left and right side of the ridge or the furrows, and then your crops are planted on the ridge. So whatever rainfall falls is captured within the pocket, so that it supplies water to the crop. Next slide, please. All right. Remember one of our objective is also that whatever technology we're rolling out to these schools we should also have a scientific information to support our technology. So we introduced it, like what I shared with you earlier, that there's in-situ without mulch and with mulch, and the flat surface, which is a conventional method of producing vegetable crops or any crops, and then integrated also the other technique like the infield mulching with and without. And then we found out that if you use the in-situ and you incorporate it with mulching, then you can be able to produce higher, let's say, switchard compared to the other techniques. So we ran this trial for 2 seasons, and you can clearly see that the highlighted values are the yield in terms of switchard. Next slide, please. All right, so this is to share with you that once we produce the vegetables, then the produce is shared between the kitchen and the community members. This was during the harvesting. You can see that on the right-hand side, this is where the produce was taken to the kitchen or the school feeding program, and shared also among the community members or the beneficiaries. And of course, also data collection, which is also relevant for our scientific output, which the student is busy capturing the yield and so on. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is to share with you that when the learners were and of course us also enjoying the produce with them. These are a few photos to share with you. Next slide, please. Right, next. All right, thank you. And of course also training, one of our output. We provide to the beneficiaries, school garden beneficiaries, certified or certified training, AgriCita certified accredited training, and this way a few of the activities where the training involved, including the production of seedlings, climate smart agriculture, conserving water, fertilizer application, crop protection aspect, and so on. So mainly to equip them so that at least when we exit the project, for instance, then they won't be only independent on our involvement. At least they could be able to manage or produce the vegetables. Next slide, please. So this was during the training where the beneficiaries were involved in producing seedlings, training about irrigation, fertilizer, and of course also supporting them with protective clothes and so on. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the students who are involved in the project, which they have already completed their study. They have submitted their thesis, and are waiting for the results from the external examiners. Next slide, please. So this is just to share with you that one of the students, which is Kotazo, conducted or compared the different production systems. And in his case, it was the bag system. He compared it with flat or conventional cultivation practices. So the crop was switched. So what we did was that we tried to look at the different density or planting spacing between crops and between rows, and then utilize the same area, which in this case was 3 meters by 3 meters. Utilize the same land area and use a different number of bags, and different, of course, each bag also with different number of plants, which I will share with you in the next slide, the outcome of the research. Next slide, please. Well, so this is mainly to show you that the rainfall during the growing period, rainfall amount and distribution. And you can see that majority of our rainfall during the 2019-20 growing season was in December. And next slide, please. So out of the 316 millimeter that rained during that growing period, we were able to collect using the rooftop rainwater harvesting. If you remember, I showed you the Juju tanks. We were able to collect about 72,000 liters of water, which is about 72% runoff efficiency. Next slide, please. So whatever rainfall were collected was also used to irrigate the particular trial. So this table is to show you that the output or the results which we found. For instance, you can on the top you can see that the 5B24, meaning that there were 5 bags in that 3 by 3 3 meter by 3 meter, which is 9 square meter land area. There were 5 bags. Each bag had 24 plants, which was switched, and the same also 5 bags with 48 plants. And then when it comes to the flat surface, we had 4 treatments, which was spaced plus 20 by 15, and the others 20 by 30. And then 45 by 15 and then 45 by 30 centimeter. Now, what we found out is that when it comes to the yield kilogram per hectare, we can clearly see that if you utilize that area, which is 3 by 3 or 9 square meter area, and you put 5 bags in that, which each bag containing 24 switched plants. And then if one harvests 4 times, we'll be able to get about 43,000, which is about 44,000 kilogram of switched. And if we look at the water use of how much water one can use to grow or to produce the biomass, you can clearly see that we use 47 or about 48 millimeter of water, a flat surface, which was about 330 millimeter to produce about 28,000 kilogram of switcher. When it comes to dense, let's say, if you space in your switcher 20 centimeter apart between rows, and then 15 centimeter apart between plants. So you can clearly see that the system, or the bag system, is much more efficient, which is about 90 to 91% more efficient when it comes compares to the conventional system, which makes it more ideal to introduce into the schools or households, so that they don't utilize much of our resources to produce the relevant nutritious crops. Next slide, please. Okay, so we also try to look at the potential of the two systems. Let's say, is it better to invest or produce these crops using the bag system, or can one utilize the flat or the conventional way of producing these crops, either irrigated or under dry land condition? How about if one integrates the rainwater harvesting, utilizing the rooftop to irrigate the bag, or the flat or the conventional field, and of course also integrating it to the flat surface, and then look at what produce can one get. Let's say if the area available is 12 square meter, then under conventional, one can be able to produce 2.7 kilograms. If it is irrigated either through rainwater harvesting or other mechanisms, then one can be able to get about 33 kilograms. Then if it is only under field condition, but you integrate with rainwater harvesting, then you can clearly see that it goes down to 13 kilogram. And however, if one utilizes that 12 square meter, then one can be able to produce about 53 kilogram. You can clearly see that, this bag system can create a great impact when it comes to food and nutrition security in our country. Now, the number of learners of the two. Sorry, Prof.
So sorry, Ari. I think you are. I'm sorry to say this. You are overemphasizing some issues, and
okay.
Three presenters. I would appreciate if maybe you can speed up.
Okay.
Some of the points. Yeah.
All right, that's fine. Okay, just mainly to share with you that the efficiency of the different systems which one can utilize to produce different nutritious crops. Next slide, please. So one of the output of the project was that to develop a simple information dissemination techniques like the bag system. Like for instance, if one gets the pamphlet in a pamphlet form, so that at least indicating all the steps and so on, how to develop the bag system. This was one of the outputs. And next slide, please. This was also one of the outputs which was published by WRC for information dissemination. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is also the same, just mass media, which was from last year World Food Day program. And next slide, please. All right. Of course, there were few challenges, not major, but there were a few challenges, as you can see, that we had when we were implementing the project. You can see that some we had a few challenge of theft and a few challenge of getting enough support from the beneficiaries, which is not something which is major. So these were the few challenges to mention. Next slide, please. All right. So in conclusion, that to say that this the school garden can make a huge impact when it comes to food and nutrition insecurity, and can play a great role in our society, and then introducing climate smart agriculture systems, like such as the bag system, could be the tunnel and so on, can play a great role in conserving our natural resources, and integrating this system with the rooftop rainwater harvesting can optimize about 70% of water use as compared to dryland crop production. And of course, also it's good to, it could be a good way of, like what was mentioned by CEO, the food, water, energy nexus aspect. It can be integrated to that aspect as well. And then, of course, the infrastructure support, however, is required, such as providing support for juju tanks and gutters and so on, so that we optimize the production of the site. Next slide, please. All right, so this is just as a recommendation to share with you that and sort of only limiting our impact, is also good to maybe to consider maybe going further to households, so that household will be able to produce their own vegetables. And of course, also support the school gardens, as I mentioned, that with maybe boreholes, or introduce a greener technology such as the solar system, so that they can utilize to pump water using a solar system, and of course also that like what Prof mentioned, that introduce maybe pre-processing aspect, where the school children can be able to utilize whatever produce is used there, pre-process it, and then use it as maybe combine it with like a soup and so on. And then at the end, I just want to say that the pilot project was implemented successfully, and it played a great role, or created a big impact towards the learners and the beneficiaries who were involved in the garden. Next slide, please. That's my last slide, I think. All right. So I would like to acknowledge the WRC and all the other stakeholders who were involved in this project. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you this morning that about the project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Are. Colleagues, I'm aware that, I mean, we are not managing our time properly, but I thought this is a special day, and I don't want to cut off our speakers. My apologies. I mean, I know that, I mean, we're supposed to maybe to wrap up at 11 o'clock, but I'm going to request you, if you can allow me to take extra minutes so that we can wrap up our event. Are there any questions or comments or clarity? I'm prepared to give you at least 2 minutes before I take the next speaker. Any questions or comments? I think there's a question on the chat box. And I take some of them as comments. Are there any plant and pest diseases? Are there people who are trained for pesticides application? Do you want to comment on this last questions, Are, Dr. Are?
Oh, okay. Yeah, yes. Yes, for pesticide and disease, as it was part of the training, as I shared with you, that it was accredited training. But what we try to discourage or not to encourage the beneficiaries was that to use chemical fertilizer. So we try to be more of like organic. So what we did is that we try to train, we will include in the training to utilize a way of organic repelling, maybe for instance, either you integrate your crop production with certain insect repelling plants such as the herbs and so on. And of course, also you develop a concoction like with garlic or pepper or chili, and then of course also the sunlight, so that at least you spray your leaves and then so that you repel insects, pests, so that majority of most of the time you find that most of these insect pests are the vectors of virus, for instance, like the disease, fungus, and so on, because of the over irrigation or fertilization and so on. So we did train the community members, yes.
Okay. And the last one is just a minor one. Does those schools have agriculture or gardening as a subject? Do you want to react on this?
I think currently no, but I think if there could be a way, actually one of the recommendation of the project was that if there could be a way of from the top, from the WRC, Agricultural Research Council, and then approach the Ministry of Basic Education to say that, especially for kids who are grade 7 and above, if there could be a way of integrating this gardening practices. But currently in the 2 projects or 2 schools, there was no such activity involved.
Thanks, Manda, for asking that question. Last one, quick one. Please explain how was the bags mixed in terms of the soil and the manure. I think this is the question from Professor Mbengwa. Do you want to react on this? Just straight to the point.
Okay, we didn't use soil. It was a sawdust. The idea is that, remember, if you use soil, then your bag system is going to be compacted, and the soil has got a lot of microorganisms which will allow the bag to disintegrate even before the end of the season. So we try to minimize using soil. And the manure, yes, if one can be trained like what we train the community members, can produce compost their own, for instance, so that might not be available. And that's, I don't know if I made briefly answer Prof. Mbengwa's question.
Maybe you will have another chance under the discussion.
Yes. We can discuss it. Yes. Thank you, Prof.
Caroline, can I just, hold your question, and we'll tackle it as part of the discussion so that we can take another presenter. Colleagues, our next presenter is, in fact, there are 2 presenters, Professor Mbengwa and Professor Mudau. Their presentation, I guess, is a joint presentation on the inherent resilience of indigenous food system, the case of undervalue indigenous knowledge. I guess it's Professor Mbengwa who's hitting the floor first. Am I correct? Prof. Mbengwa. Prof. Mbengwa, are you there? There's a funny sound coming through. Can you maybe adjust your mic, please? Okay. Prof. Mbengwa is from National Agriculture Marketing Council, but is also associated with the Univen Alumina Agriculture Association. The same applies with Professor Mudau, who is from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, but also associated with the University of Venda Agriculture Alumina Association. Over to you, Prof.
I was given this from the screen, resilience of indigenous food of undervalued indigenous knowledge.
Maybe can you switch off your video so that we can have a strong network from your side, if you don't mind. At least people, they can see your face now. If you can switch off the video, because it seems like there's a network problem.
Can you hear me now?
It's much better.
Thank you. All right. I was saying that as you can as the screen is the inherent resilience.
Prof, we can't hear you. Can you maybe adjust your mic or your sound?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah. Go on.
All right. I suppose that my presentation is gonna be very short. Will encompass the introduction as follows, the topic and the influence and thought analysis and conclusion. As you can see from the slides, that the indigenous vegetables are very much popular in the rural areas, and the rural people, they use this as a way of life and also as a way to generate income. This has been happening many a times, and all the systems that seek to discourage them because this kind of system has been so much resilient to such kind of disturbance. Look at the slide again, you could see that it's also a value addition in relation to this kind of vegetables. But much of the value addition has not been exercised as a result of lack of infrastructure and other related resources that are required. The second slide talks about as a knowledge base, which this knowledge base is generated by the traditional people, local people, and this knowledge is generated as a way of life. It's an organic way of producing knowledge, and that is why this knowledge has been passed from one generation to another generation, and making it possible that this kind of knowledge gets more attention, especially in the rural area, where there is not much influence of conventional knowledge. And again, this knowledge is the knowledge that seeks to promote rural livelihood. As the previous presenters have mentioned, that this knowledge is the backbone and the cornerstone of the development of the rural people. And it's the only alternative for them because they do not have more capital to acquire the conventional knowledge. And if you can see from the slides, you see some indigenous goals, which is being used a lot in the rural areas. And also you could see that there is also seeds and the dried vegetables that is being marketed in the roadside, which is their main market environment. And one could also say that the system resilience is a question that has been seen or asked by many people, because a number of efforts has been done in order to demobilize these rural areas to cling into this food system. Because most of this food that is being produced from natural resources and also from the communal lands were regarded and are still regarded as food that is for the poor people, people that are not civilized. And as such, this became one of the things that propelled most of the rural areas to really move away from kind of system. This is a very difficult shock that system has actually encountered, and also has made it possible that this system could be regarded as a more resilient food system, because in many areas as we go around, we are able to see that these systems or the food system and indigenous food are still utilized in the rural areas. And then if you also look at the shocks that emanate from the climate change, like the flood, all those kind of things, you will imagine that this could hold some of the bases where food materials are grown or grown. But at the end of the day, you find that you still have lots of them coming up, although the most serious threat is the issue of the population growth, because most of the land that is for this kind of has been
Prof. Mbega, we can't hear you now.
so at all.
It's better now.
Okay. So I guess you can hear me now. So with regard to this, one can be able to see that this is promoted and is supported, as Professor Modi said. This could constitute one of the biggest source of food security in rural areas, and also in the very urban areas, because the very urban areas are the most areas that are affected by food security.
Prof, maybe you can just show us slides, because I mean there's a network problem.
There is a okay, but can you hear me now? Not at all. Okay. So,
We can see slides on the screen, but there's a network problem. Yes. Prof, maybe you can just show us slides so that we shouldn't waste time. There's a network problem, yeah, from your side.
yeah. Although the slide is not any much difference, but okay. That's how my presentation goes. Thank you very much. Because of the network, I could
Okay, thanks, Prof, and my apologies. I mean, the network is it's an issue from your side. Colleagues, I suggest that we take another presentation from Professor Mudau. Professor Mudau, are you there?
I'm there, Chair.
Yes, please upload your presentation and go on.
I'm not sure whether he has put down his sharing on the screen.
Prof. Mbengwa, can you just, stop sharing the screen so that, we get the presentation from Professor Mudau. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. I'm just going to continue to where Mbengwa has presented, but basically it's in the similar topic. When the alumni from the University of Venda met and discussed, they gave us this topic about inherent resilience of indigenous food system. And the question that I said to myself is, what is that resilience that they're talking about? Because traditionally, all along, people were living with these old indigenous food systems, and they've been sustainable, and they've got ways on how they can be able to do that. And therefore, I had asked myself to say, if Africa is big, the way how it can encompass Spain, France, and other countries, China, India, in terms of the bigger size of hectare size, how should we be able to build that resistance? And the other question that I asked myself is, can Africa feed itself? And in Africa today, the continent currently has a total annual GDP of 1.6 trillion. Prof. Modi was talking about GDPs in all sectors. And its economy is the third fastest growing regions in the planet after China and India. And in 2010, it was recorded to be estimated around 15% in terms of growth, and added in terms of the 70 billions in the world economy. And Africa continent has over a billion of people, and the literacy rates still remain high. And the continent is more democratic than ever before. A lot of people say no and whatever, all these sort of things. But I think there are different contrasting views in that regard. But in that way, where do we see Africa in the next 30 years? Nigeria will become the largest economy in the continent in less than 20 years' time because of oil and education. And Africa's continent will have over 2 billion people over the next 40 years. And Africa economy will be more integrated. It requires new knowledge in terms of developing food systems in order to build a resistance and resilience. And the level of democratization and political understanding will greatly expand, and the number of educated people will become much more than today. Therefore, now, can Africa feed itself? Can Africa feed the world? Can Southern Africa, what is Southern Africa's role in this regard, in terms of the developing food system, in terms of resiliency, in the way of agriculture, food, and economic development? Now, in terms of the African development, economic development, agriculture leads, and in terms of the new growth paths, new industrial policy framework, and new growth paths, and so on and so on, we are of the view that agriculture will play a tremendous role, because we do have plenty of resources, and we've got a huge potentials, we have the key to keep looking through the small window. We do have that, and the main door of the house is potential that remain unlocked. Therefore, I put these spirals in terms of African challenges, but however, the most important ones that I'm going to concentrate on is on the food nutrition and health crisis. In terms of building out issues of food security and building up that resistance. I won't go into terms of political stability and energy crisis, and that could be the other discussions of the other days. Now, the first part, in terms of the food and nutrition part, I think Professor Modi has spoken up a lot of things about all these vegetables. Some of them, they were like the same. These are the most popular wild harvested species, but the challenge is, do we have systems in terms of agriculture, in terms of developing year-round production system and year-round production protocol in terms of extent that we should be able to build that resistance? We know about all these vegetables. To a limited extent now, we know even how to cultivate it. There's this journal article that the alumni from University of Venda were circulating, which was published by the University of Venda by Mahanya and Chivas and Chisikawa. He made mention a number of vegetables which are there. But what is that in this vegetable that we're interested in? Prof. Modi talk about iron and seleniums and other things as well. But to what extent that we should be able to build a competitive space, that we should be able to build, that we have a nutraceutical product from these crops. Why I'm saying this? We're in a competitive edge. We're the only one who knows about this. We've been using this crop all along, but to what extent that we should be able that in order to create a competitive space that we can be able to export our own nutraceutical products. Now, how do we build that research to build resiliency of these indigenous crops? Either by cultivation practices, water efficiency systems, upscaling production, quality of post-harvest processing, smallholder farmer support, and enterprise development. To what extent that we intellectuals are we prepared that we should be able to have protocol about this? Now, we spoke about yields. In any development finance, when you want to fund any project, you talk about yield, and yields determine your price. If you don't maximize those yields and you want to have an offtake agreement, I can tell you each and every time you'll find yourself in court because you won't be able to supply. So therefore, to what extent do we understand agronomic practices that will be able to link into quality aspects of it? And quality, I'm not talking about only mineral nutrition, either in terms of the chemical composition, the flavonoids, the antioxidants activities, and so on and so on. And not only in a text tube, but to such an extent that we will be able to know that when we maximize all these aspects, we'll be able to deal with it. Now, do we have gene banks of all the products that we have? How are we maximizing that? Do we actually even understand in terms of how we should be able to build in terms of using all these generative sequencing systems that we should be able to build resistance because they are so vulnerable in terms of diseases, water management systems. We don't even understand those crops. And these are some of the understanding that if we be able to build that, then we should be able to know exactly what we have so that at least we can build that resistance going forward. In terms of the health crisis, I put this cloud plot. These are some of the areas that currently I'm working on, and this is a plot which one of my PhD is working on, but I want to indicate this. And this is coming from the herbal medicines and in a bush tea, which is a new commercial crop which has not been fully exploited. Then what we have discovered about all this red spot, and you should not be confused about it, we have discovered that it has a wide range of metabolites that when we cultivated this under protected environment, rather than when we cultivated it in an open field. And what does it tell us? That if we take advantage to create a competitive space, a competitive edge, then we can be able to maximize all these aspects that we have, which do not have to go to the east and west. Therefore, now, the social scientists and the historian, they're talking about the knowledge in a global south. And I can tell you that we as South Africans, that if we don't maximize what we have, I can tell you America will be here, which might be good. The Australia will be here, which is good. But the knowledge in terms of understanding the global south is here. And therefore, Africa is a lab of the world. Therefore, what I'm saying in this box again is this box plots. It also gives an evidence that we had like 301 and 312 where we detected all these compounds, which are relatively new, some of them have not been maximized. And that tells you that our environment is quite very good because we've got good sunshines year round, that we can be able to take that space to be more competitive. From the herbal tea that I'm talking about, we have discovered this new compound. And this we are entailing that it should be able to build bioactivity in terms of how we can be able to understand it. And therefore, why don't we be able to take, in terms of indigenization, all the aspects that we have to such an extent that we can build that space in terms of being competitive? Now, what will make science and technology not to grow in our space? We don't understand the management capacity on how we can be able to develop all these crops that we're talking about. We don't understand the lack of using of equity instruments which are there in terms of our development, DFI institutions. We do have, to a limited extent, we've got lack of technical expertise, how we can be able to do that because we're still depending in the north. We do lack the understanding on how to negotiate an offtake agreement. Like, for example, if we are planting a unique crop, how will you be able to go to SPAR to Pick and Pay and be able to negotiate an offtake agreement that you can be able to supply your commodities? These are some of the aspects that is lacking us in order to understand how we should be able to build resilience in terms of our crops. And this is a challenge that we have. And now, how will the science and technology in a space of knowledge and resilience? Now, we need to foster and create a critical mass in terms of the productivity, in terms of our M&Ds at the highest quality. And these aspects, I think we're doing very well in that regard. Sustainability in terms of creating a number of researchers, the transformation in terms of how we can increase young researchers and young women into science, and how we should be able to have influence. This is on an academic space. But I think as a country, I think we're doing very well. But how should we be able to understand that? Because all these crops that we're talking about, which are indigenous, they're coming from the wild and we domesticated them. How do we understand the water use efficiency in terms of how we can be able to do that? Because theoretically, all the theories that talks about the predominant dryland farming system started in 1930, long time ago. And they were saying that, no, the more you plant all these crops in a dryland, you're able to maximize productivity and you're able to maximize crop of highest quality in terms of all these flavonoids. And now that we're introducing water issues, what actually happens? We don't know. Now, I want to leave you with these open-ended questions, and that is, what is the relationship between research and development and the future of the mankind? And how do we effectively use innovation to drive economic growth? And to what extent, and what is the optimal investment into science and technology to drive development? And how do you create effectively to invest into research and development in order to improve health and welfare in South Africa? Understanding all these challenges, that the indigenous aspects, we need to build resistance, but how do we be able to build that going forward to such an extent that will, as South Africa, will be able to have competitive edge in a competitive space? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Mdau. We really appreciate your thought. Colleagues, are there any burning questions or comments before we take the last speaker? I know that colleagues are posting questions on the chat box. Tobile, please assist me.
I don't have anyone.
Okay, if that is the case, I suggest that we take the last speaker. The last speaker is Professor Suwoka from the Agriculture Research Council. The presentation is about the future of food, understanding the potential of indigenous crop and lifetime experiences. Prof, without wasting much time, over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Hello?
you, Prof. Yes, we can hear
good.
you.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much to Water Research Commission and University of KwaZulu-Natal for inviting me today and giving me the liberty by adding this last piece of my title, My Life's Experience. And that made me think about World Food Day. And so today I'm going to take you on a quick run around the world and look at some of the crops that others are doing that are unique to different parts of the world. We know that we have to feed the 9 billion people. We've heard about it today. We also know that mainly there's 3 cereal species, wheat, rice, and maize, that are providing the carbohydrates that dominate human consumption. Of course, there are 30 other species that people generally eat. But the question is, what if the disease breakout then destroys these crops? What if climate change prevents their production in the traditional areas. So I believe there's a high risk of the global situation being threatened for food security. So we need to look at the alternative or the underutilized crops. Through the ages, we've seen that there's maybe 50,000 species that have been eaten by humans. So why do we only use 30 or so in our normal life? They have different names, of course. They're called neglected. Maybe that's because the scientists didn't spend much time on them. Or they're underutilized, or they can be called indigenous. But many times, as we've heard already, they don't originate from that particular place. So maybe they should be called indigenized. Or they're called minor crops or orphan crops. All of these words kind of give it a bad flavor. And yet, as we've just heard from Professor Ndu, many of them are niche crops where they could be generating good income. Mostly, as we've heard, they're used for the poor people, for subsistence. They're supposed to be reducing the risk and increasing sustainability of agriculture. Many of them, of course, are used for celebrating cultural and dietary diversity. And so there's a wide range of species. So let's look at some of them. We know that there's cereals. Some of them have been mentioned today. Some of them are from Africa, some are from other parts of the world. Quinoa, pearl millet, Prof. Modi talked about sorghum. Then there's the fruits and vegetables. We've heard and seen quite a lot of the vegetables this morning. Then, most important are the legumes, because this is bringing the protein into their diets. And here, of course, we have both the agronomic and tree species. Maybe somebody's mentioned Moringa or Bambara already. And then under the ground as well, there's roots and tubers. And there's been some mention of these as well this morning. So we have these 4 groups, and I'm going to try and highlight some from around the world as we look at this World Food Day. But it is my story. So I was born in Marion Hill in KwaZulu, and the monastery was established by a Trappist missionary, and he established farms in that area, schools, clinics, etc. And this is where I learned to eat amadumbi instead of the Irish potatoes. I know they're grown in wetlands, and it's actually a perennial crop, but usually it's grown in an annual fashion in those wetlands. So as we travel across Africa, we can look at some of the other indigenous foods. Some of them are famous now. One is teff from Ethiopia. And of course, as we have many Ethiopians and Eritreans living in South Africa now, we know injera, the pancake, as their staple. This is, of course, is an Eragrostis, but we know that it's now being grown even in the Free State. And then, of course, we all know the baobab tree, and this is in our wildlife areas, but it's the Germans and the Americans that have realized that that fruit pulp is rich in vitamin C and antioxidants, rich in minerals, and so now they are marketing it already, even in some health food drinks, etc. Further around Africa, of course, we see Bambara Groundnut, originally from West Africa, and there's been a lot of work done around that, but not much breeding work, and mostly they're still land races, and this provides opportunity for that resilience through the wet or dry years, and it's very drought tolerant. And then, of course, Amaranthus. I think we've heard quite a lot about Amaranthus today, and mostly people have been talking about the green leaves as marog, but there's also different species that are used for the grain, and the grain also is high in calcium And so we shouldn't forget that here in South Africa. So let's fly across to South America now and look at the example of quinoa. I mean, 25 years ago, nobody around the world knew about it. It was only grown there in the high mountains of Peru and Bolivia. And I can remember going to some of those fields, and they were really just postage stamp size fields, but those farmers would collect that seed and then go and sit in the local village market and sell it. But it became the queen of the superfoods because it's gluten-free and protein-rich, and you can get more than 20% of your RDA. It also, of course, is good for anti-inflammatory, lowers the cholesterol, and it supplies all nine of the amino acids. And so this is why it's become the superfood. But now, because it's so expensive, some of those poor farmers can't even afford to eat it unless they're growing it themselves. It's highly adaptable, and it's grown under a wide range of climate conditions. So although it originated in the mountains of Peru, it now can even be grown near to the coast. So let's fly to the north now and visit the Mexican food. We know that our maize comes originally from that Mexico area, and of course they have always traditionally combined maize and the beans, and so it's the protein rich and carbohydrates, and they have many wonderful foods and combinations. And then if we even go further north to Canada, we know that the Canadians also are supplying some unique products, and one of them is maple syrup. It's from the forests, and again the climate conditions are a mix of cold spring nights and warm summer temperatures. This allows the sap to flow, and then it can be collected and made into maple syrup, and the tree can maybe give an average of 40 liters per season, and yet that only produces 1 liter of syrup. So here again, there's opportunity for further research. But we haven't got time to stop, so let's zoom off down to the southern hemisphere again and look at the kiwi fruit. Probably each one of us knows what a kiwi fruit is, but when I was a kid, it wasn't available, it wasn't here, because of course it was originally called a Chinese gooseberry. But since 1900, it was grown in New Zealand, and one day in 1959, Turner just decided to call it kiwi fruit because he was a New Zealander. Of course, we know a kiwi is an animal, so it's rather strange to call this a fruit, because I'm sure the kiwi doesn't eat a kiwi fruit. Anyway, this is also maybe a marketing success, because they managed to really send it around the world and make it popular, more popular than some of the other traditional fruits. And of course, now we know that there's a brand name of the kiwi that's grown in New Zealand, because actually more kiwi is produced in Italy than in New Zealand, and they're closer to the European market, of course. But we know that this has really been backed by much agricultural research, and even one of the colleagues who did his PhD with me in California was working on these kiwi fruits, and many breeding programs. And now even there's a mini kiwi fruit that's very much smaller. You can just pop into your mouth. But of course, it's a farming system, and so they need to have honeybees for the pollination. And one of the advantages of the kiwi fruit is that it has negligible protein and fat. So let's go off to Southeast Asia. And here there are a number of crops, trees, agronomic crops that are resilient to climate change. Even though it's a tropical area with high rainfall, many of them have high antioxidant properties and contain essential nutrients. But as South Africans, we don't even know what any of these crops or fruits look like. But we do know one of them, and one of them is called lychee. And probably, again, I can remember climbing the tree at my auntie's house in KwaZulu and picking them. But there's also 3 others, rambutan, logan, and mangosteen. But why don't we know them? So what are the similarities? They all have a white flesh. They all have a big seed in the middle. They all grow on trees. You can eat them straight from the tree. Well, of course, now you can buy a can. And they all taste good when mixed into your alcoholic drink. So why and how are they different? The lychee is smaller, it's got rough skin. The rambutan is larger, and it has these hairy sort of poking prickles on them. So maybe that's why it's not so popular. Lonagan is like almost like the size of a loquat and a smooth brown skin. And the mangosteen, of course, is large with white fruit in a shell, hard shell, so it can easily be transported. So why do we only know about lychees and not about these other ones? So we've seen that there's many alternative crops. There's many indigenous crops. There's crops that can be used by the farmers and by agribusiness all around the world. And where can we find information about this? So CropBase is an information system that was developed by Crops for the Future in Malaysia. And they have a select crop item where you can go to the knowledge base, you can put your location in, you can search. There's more than 200 crops, and there's soil and climate data. And of course, it has been a combined effort of many scientists. And then it provides some kind of an estimate of the yield and of what the farmer's income could be. So we want to secure food for the future. We need to have some more research and development. We know that maybe the food products need to be developed, and here we need some innovation so that these indigenous crops can be have a longer shelf life, and they can be developed into different kind of products that people would buy. Then, of course, there has to be a lot of marketing, and I showed 2 examples, the kiwi and quinoa, where the marketing really won that crop over. But it has to really be along that whole value chain, as Prof. Modi was showing us. But we also know that with climate change, we've got to look at what are those crop requirements, where are the suitable places, can we determine the boundaries for those locations? And the last speaker also brought in a lot about the breeding and how we could work with the indigenous crops for that. But in the end, we need to be able to have those advisories. Just as Hinsa was explaining and showing us the dissemination tools that they've been using at the school. But most of all, it starts at home. So why don't we all try to start eating indigenous crops every day? Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Prof. I mean, that was a very interesting presentation for taking us across the globe, showing us, I mean, different case studies. Colleagues, are there any questions or comments, not only to Prof. Walker, but to all speakers? I know that, I mean, Professor JJ asked a question about the what breeds of chicken on one side of the slides. I think he was referring to Prof. Mbengwa's presentation. Any questions or comments from the participants?
I'm trying to raise my hand, but I think technology doesn't allow me.
Okay, go on, Prof. Yeah.
Yes, Sue, it's good to see you.
Yes, hello, Albert.
Yes, it's very good to see you. You don't change. You're very provocative, and you back up your statements with facts. But I got a comment that was not shared with the dialogue colleagues here. And the comment said, I mean, when and how are we going to make this not appear as a talk, just like a talk show that is not seen to be realistic and implemented? Do you understand what I'm saying? So I want to ask Sue, it's probably the last opportunity that I'll get this month. Hopefully I'll see you for the next many years. But while you are here, and I'm asking everyone else, how can we make this real? How can we make it change the lives of the people and take it outside of the realm of research and grand statements such as the ones that we made today about how it can change the lives of the people? Does anybody have a general statement to assist perhaps the government and other people?
Chair, your Prof. Modi. Prof. Modi?
Yes.
Sylvester here from Water Research Commission. I think from our side, as Desigan has indicated at the beginning of this session, we are committed to allocate resources, especially considering the issue that you have highlighted with regards to the Kwasa siblings. Let us take that idea or dream and convert it into reality. I fully agree with you. We don't need to just have a talk show, have this event year in, year out, and then nothing happened. Let us start moving away from theory to practice. Let us see results on the ground. And this is what the WRC is planning to do. I'm glad that, I mean, you are working with the WRC. We just need to have further engagement or discussion outside this session. Some of these things need to be executed on the ground. And I like the concept note that you have put it on the table with regards to this KwaZulu-Natal small-scale agriculture. Let us use that and put it under the WRC demonstration program or focus area. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. I'm asking, I know Sue is coming in. I mean, while Sue is still here, we've got the experience, we've got the research, we can cover ourselves, and all we need is 50 people in Limpopo and 100 people in Eastern Cape, and make up 1 million people who are supported by the Water Research Commission and government in general, and they are going to produce a crop that is underutilized, orphaned, and it will go through the value chain and be helpful, not only in terms of changing the lives of the people who produce it, but also contributing to other aspects of security. Thanks for that. I look forward to it coming to reality.
Yeah, let me take one example, Prof. Modi, and maybe, you know, we could take either the Simba chips, or we can take McCain and their frozen foods. So as well as us researchers and the farmers, when we're looking at the value chain, we really have to bring those big business guys on as well. Because if you look in other countries, in Europe, in Italy, in the US, then you don't only buy Irish potato chips. In South Africa, there's a very few beetroot and sweet potato and whatever, but why isn't McCain doing something like that? Why isn't Simba Chips doing something like that? Then it can be big. So if the farmers can have those contracts for, I mean, and this is just one example, and I'm not pointing fingers badly at those people, but I think that WRC has to also bring that piece of business on board, so that processing and part can also be a part of it. I mean, many years ago, I was in France and I saw those small processing machines, even canning machines where you just had 5 cans. And so we never could bring that to South Africa. Why? We could have made it ourselves, actually. And now we see, especially during lockdown, people were really becoming innovative themselves because they had to. So they couldn't sell their tomatoes, so they were making tomato sauce. They were really, you know, it was the end of the growing season. So people I know had so many beans. I mean, they really did something about it themselves. So I think that there's really opportunity for that, but it has to have some support to make it viable. We have many home industries in South Africa. Let's really grow them up. And I mean, the Ridderplot at FOPI, they've been doing some of the things around processing and of the underutilized crops. So let's take that information and use it.
No, I fully agree with you, Prof. I know that, I mean, UKZN has done a lot, and Prof. Modi and your team, it's high time now we take the information that you have generated and start, I mean, implementing some of the recommendations. I'm happy that, I mean, there are colleagues from Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. Let us take this issue regarding the underutilized or neglected crops, I mean, to another level. We really need to address issues related to food security. And we have got the responsibility as part of government or as Water Research Commission to make sure that, I mean, the knowledge that we generate also needs to address the science policy interface. So I'm available to engage you guys outside this session, and where it's necessary, we have to allocate resources to make sure that, I mean, we are assisting the our smallholder farmers so that, I mean, issues related to food security are addressed properly. And it's up to us to start just keep on talking and start implementing some of the outcomes or recommendations that are coming through the research and development activities that we are driving, not only from Water Research Commission side, but from also from Agriculture Research Council and other knowledge generations organizations. Any questions or comments maybe from participants, or maybe any comments from the speakers? I think there's a question from Mr. Rambaud and Dr. Tinaro about the national policy on food and nutrient security for South Africa, and the database for crop suitable platform presented is accessible to the public. I guess Prof. Modi and Prof. Suwaka can be able to respond to the last one with regards to the database for these crops. Who is first?
Prof, we have a hand from Mudau as well.
Okay, Prof. Mudau, go ahead. Maybe Prof. Walker and Prof. Modi will be coming after you.
Thanks, Chair. One of the challenges when we are dealing with the underutilized crop, let me just choose that word, Prof. Is that most of the researchers, what we do, we do things just to publish, and we're happy about it, and then we move on. And those stuff, they sit in your CIB database, Google Scholars, and whatever stuff, and so on and so on. And one of the critical challenges which made the honey bush tea industry in the country not to grow very fast is because they didn't understand even the issues of yields, how much tons per hectare basis that you can be able to produce. And I'm saying this because from the development finance point of view, it doesn't work, because that's a deal breaker if you don't understand that. And you are so vulnerable in terms of court cases. You've got a very serious offtake agreement or contractual obligations that you need to do. Therefore, if you don't understand the yields and how you can be able to maximize, those are the first questions that you want to do on the investment side. is good. But I'm of the view that the issues of underutilized crops is not only just for home consumption and to feed. So therefore, if you want to build it at a larger scale in terms of how you can maximize profit, either to sell it in any retail stores, ShopRite, Pick and Pay, and Wilson, and so on. These are some of the basic things that you need to do, understand that. And how you package, how you process, and so on and so on. And if we as scientists, we start to have that approach to build that dimension, that should be able to create issues of industrializations and so on and so on, because we cannot use money for government. And if the government is talking about issues of industrialization and thereafter we just leave it like that. So these are some of the critical elements that we need to understand in order to build the industry about all these aspects. And all the industries all over the world, they started like that. And if you build it like that, like for instance, I was talking about lychee and Ramadan and so on and so on. I mean, the Chinese, they built up their industry based on that. So therefore, if we move out from our test tube comfortable position and to build out on how we should be able to build industry, I think that's how we should be able to get ways and how you can pump resources into that.
Okay, thanks, Prof. Mda, for those inputs. We really appreciate that. Any comments maybe from other speakers?
Well, from my side, through you, Chair,
yes,
I appreciate
yes,
the comment. I appreciate the comment from, I think it's Manda, about the national policy on food and nutrition security.
Yeah.
I believe that we need to assist the Water Research Commission by raising our hands and availing the information that we've already gathered that can contribute to the, I don't want to call it revision, but to assist that policy to be improved. There are a lot of opportunities there. So I would like to thank the Water Research Commission because virtually every presentation that was given today is an indication of how the Water Research Commission over many, many years has influenced a researcher to become somebody who is responsible for a community. And now the Water Research Commission says, we want you to assist the nation. So I'd like to thank you, and I believe that working together, we can do more.
Thank you so much for those kind words. We really appreciate that as Water Research Commission. I know that if it wasn't you guys or key strategic partners, we wouldn't be where we are today. And we really appreciate your support. And I do believe that through this partnership, we'll continue supporting one another. Any further comments or questions from participants? Or even, the way forward, now that we have this World Food Day event, what's next, Prof? Prof Modi, I'm throwing this at you, considering the fact that you have already raised up a hand to say you have got these ideas and you would like to implement it in KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape, Mpumalanga, and Limpopo. So how do we make sure that that idea does not just disappear from the sky? Yeah.
Look, there are many ways we can look at it. I think we can make people attracted to this and make many people participate in it. I received a newsletter from a university that I went to in the US, where an old man who participated in research that contributed to resolving some of the problems of agriculture in the Midwest is today winning a Food Day award.
Mm.
To me, if you had something like that as the Water Research Commission, where there is clear evidence that there is transfer of knowledge from the WRC projects to the people, and it is not the researcher who's winning an award this time. It is somebody who's showing evidence of his or her life, a community even whose livelihoods have been changed as a result of the presence of the researchers who are funded by the Water Research Commission. I think we can try next year to have an award like that, a Food Day Award, where there is clear evidence that the Water Research Commission project has influenced government policy. It has changed the people's lives, but it is not Albert who wins it. It is Madlamini. It is somebody in the deep rural areas who says, I want more. That to me, that would be a very interesting thing, so that next year when we have this kind of gathering or this dialogue, it's also a celebration.
Okay. I've taken note of that. Maybe I will have discussion with you outside this on the mechanism. How do we make sure that, I mean, next year maybe this forms a part of our event. Thanks, Prof, for raising that. But I wanted to ask Lagzon. Lagzon, you have been part of the WRC team, and you also have got very good ideas about this underutilized crop. I mean, do you have any comments on this? Lagzon, Dr. Hamo, are you there? Okay, it seems like it's not there. Professor Mabaude, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, and any comments from your side?
Oh, thanks very much, Prof. It's hard to comment, you know. Prof. Modi brought me into this business, as you know. Prof. Sue Walker mentored me along the way, and she still remains a valuable resource in my academic growth. So I have enjoyed the presentations from the speakers today. I think the key issues that were raised that I think need to be highlighted. Prof. Modi raised the issue of policies and institutions to support a just transition to equitable, inclusive, and sustainable food systems that value natural capital and indigenous knowledge systems. He also emphasized on the inclusion of youth in agriculture. So this is something that we are taking very seriously from our side. Our center has actually established a thematic research area focusing on youth in agriculture, where we really want to understand what the issues are and how youth can be brought into agriculture and what interests youth in agriculture. So I think that was very important to be raised today. And hopefully next year when we meet again, amongst our speakers might be some young people. We always talk about youth. So I think maybe next year when we meet, it will be good to have some young people who are in agriculture also sharing some insights from that perspective. Hinta's presentation, I think, was especially important and very useful during the times that we are going through with the lockdown and the fact that COVID has disrupted food supply chains and, you know, exacerbated the problem of food security, especially at a household level. So the capability of households and, you know, or local food systems to be strengthened to be able to produce on nutritious food, not just food, but nutritious food, using locally available resources and in a sustainable manner is very important. And I saw people were excited when you was presenting, showing those pictures. And today, later on after this, Prof. Modi will be launching a zero hunger policy for students at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, which he is championing to say there should be no hungry students. I think some of a lot of what Hinta was presenting, offers such solutions around strengthening food security for learners at high school and at university levels, as well as even within communities in things such as community and home gardens. And Prof. Mdau was very enthusiastic. And, I like the honey bush story and the issue of commercializing some of these crops. So I think it is important that we understand that whilst we promote the production end, we must also promote the commercial end, which is the markets, create the markets, because it's a supply and demand. So we need to stimulate the demand, which would then stimulate the supply. And then now the farmers can produce, in response to the demand. So identifying particular indigenous crops that have commercial value or that can be developed into useful product is very important. So we also need to think broadly in terms of what products we can come up with. And I then enjoyed Prof. Sue's talk. I specifically asked her to talk about her journey, knowing that she has traveled, globally, working on this particular aspect and with various groups and women in particular. So it was very exciting. I'm in my office and, my administrator came running in when she heard Sue talking, about beetroot and all these things. And she was jotting down notes, trying to keep up with Sue's talk. So it was very exciting and very thought-provoking. And thank you for that. And lastly, I must thank the Water Research Commission under the leadership of Desigen and yourself leading the water use in agriculture strategic area, because actually a lot of everything that we talked about here has mostly been made possible through research that has been funded by the Water Research Commission. I think you were the first people to take a leap of faith and fund these crops when no one else wanted to touch them, when everyone wanted to be doing maize, wheat, and soybeans. And you said, let's do madumbis and these other crops that no one cares about. And as a result, we are here today with so much evidence that has been generated. You mentioned at the beginning when you introduced Prof. Modi that he has graduated many students, and most of them have been on these projects funded by the Water Research Commission. I got my master's and PhD from one such project funded by the Water Research Commission. So the funding has been very key. And I also thank you in the announcement that you made that it is now part of your strategy and the strategic focus area, meaning that we can now expect sustained research. Wherever there's been development, there's been supported by knowledge generation at the highest levels. So we thank you for supporting such knowledge generation, and we hope on our side as researchers, we will continue to generate outputs that are useful, not just to informing policy, also informing the practice and fabric of society. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much for those kind words. I know that, we are still going to have engagement outside this event. And I'm happy to say that we have got also other ongoing projects focusing on indigenous trees. And we are happy about the results that are coming through the system. And very soon we will share those results with our stakeholders. Colleagues, are there any further comments or questions from your side? Tobila, you can assist me if there's anybody who has raised a hand.
Nothing from my side, Prof.
Nothing from your side. Colleagues, my apologies again. We were supposed to have wrapped up this session at 11 o'clock, but due to the fact that we had several speakers who were sharing us, sharing very interesting information, I did not want to cut anyone. And I really appreciate your availability. I know that, we are all busy, but the fact that, you avail yourself, we really appreciate that as Water Research Commission. And on behalf of Water Research Commission management, I would like to thank you once again. And I do believe that you will continue supporting the Water Research Commission, not only when we have an event like this, but also in other assignments like reviewing proposals, sitting in our reference group meetings and so on. And to all our key strategic partners, thank you so much for all your support. I know that the WRC name out there it's well recognized or well cited. Is because of through this partnership that we have with you. We really appreciate that, and I do believe that we'll continue working together. As a result of that, I officially close this dialogue. Thank you so much, and please take care. Unless if there's anyone who have got a question or comment, otherwise I'm gonna close this session now. It looks like
thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, it seems like there's nothing. I officially close this dialogue, and thank you so much. We'll meet again next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.